Hello and welcome to the What's Current podcast hosted by NAPIT, where we discuss all things electrical. I'm your host, Andrew Duffen, commercial technical engineer at NAPIT. I'm joined by Steve Humphreys, who's the technical commercial manager at NAPIT. I'm also joined by Victor, and I'm going to let Victor do his introductions to let us know who he works for and what he's about.
Hello, so my name is Viktors Nikolajevs. I'm the key account manager for CTEK, where we do all sorts of battery charging for any type of vehicle you can think of. So starting from your petrol and diesel cars, 12-volt batteries, and all the way up to electric vehicle charging, and anything in the middle, whether it's boats, planes, anything you can think of.
Any kind of transport then?
Yeah, if it's got a battery in it, we'll get it going one way or the other.
That's interesting, actually, because just as an aside, we're already going off on a tangent, and that's why podcasts are really good, is I was at a meeting recently where we were talking about things, everyone's focused on the car journey, and that's the focus of the public, but actually it's so much bigger than that, isn't it? If you think about fleet transport, buses, trains, and aeroplanes, which just is mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like saying boats as well.
It's everywhere, and it's, people don't always appreciate the full range of where you find batteries and what you need to do with them.
Yeah.
So it's not just a case of, oh, well, I've got a battery, so it'll be all right.
Yeah.
You've got to maintain it, you've got to extend the life of it. So
I like that though, and we'll charge it.
Yeah.
If it needs charging, we've got a charger that will do it.
Yeah, but it's right. I would have never thought about, especially planes.
Yeah.
You know, and they're all going to need charge points one way or the other, aren't they? So.
Absolutely.
So Victor, just tell us a little bit about how you got into it, because we had a chat yesterday at the hotel and over a beer or two and a nice meal, and it was really interesting. And we've spoke before about your background, because it's very similar to me and Andy. You was like sparking, engineering, and the college kind of teaching vibe as well.
Yeah. So basically, I've gone through my training as electrical engineer. I fell into doing some self-employed work, sort of mostly around electronics and programming, so getting production lines going and things like this as I was still studying. And at the same time, with my background, I kind of fell into teaching English part-time. So I started doing it when I was 18.
18?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
And then as I was going towards sort of my degree, back end of the degree, one of my college lecturers reached out to me and said, I know you've taught before, we need somebody to do workshops, like, have you got a day or two you could potentially spare? And then 10 years later,
as it is,
I spent a lot of time within education, so further education, higher education, full-time students, apprentices, worked with some very well-known brands, which I will not be naming, but it's been quite a journey. Then I went to private education, where we did more specialist training, like safe systems of work, authorised persons, authorised CPs, that sort of stuff, where I kind of was working my way through the ranks. And then, long story short, got contacted by CTEK. Oh, we need somebody to do we need somebody to get the training arm of CTEK going internationally, and also we need somebody to do the manuals. So we need somebody to basically head a department, and that was 4 and a bit years ago. So I went, right, let's give it a go. Something different, plenty of travelling. Spent a few years doing that, got sucked in more into compliance side of things. So making sure that the products that we release, particularly on the EV side, are fit for the UK market in terms of what the requirements are, because although we still follow the IEC standards, there are little caveats there and there.
I was going to say, where's CTEK based? Where are they primarily based from? Where they come from?
CTEK, as a business, we're a Swedish company. We've been going for just over 20 years now.
Right.
And one of the unique things with us is that all of our products we actually design ourselves. So if you buy anything that's labelled as CTEK, we've actually designed and built in-house. Obviously, we outsource manufacturing like everyone does these days.
Yeah, component parts would be.
But, if you buy something, you're not going to buy the same product from somebody else just with a different label on. It's always going to be, our product is going to be unique.
Yeah.
And then we do a lot of OEM work as well, where some of the high-end automotive brands, where you buy chargers from them. If you look at the back of them, we'll actually say CTEK on the back.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's
something about
really
it yesterday. I found that really interesting. I mean, that journey's just mad, Victor, because like you say, you never know where this industry's going to take you. You know, we say all the time that, you know, an apprentice electrician going through the motions, scrambling in loft hatches or up in scissor lifts and whatever, and then suddenly you're on a podcast with us. Made it.
How did this happen? Where did it all go wrong?
That's fantastic. Thanks, Victor. So, just coming on to some of the. So our listeners can get a sense of what's going on in the UK market. And obviously, you're well known in other parts of the country and in the UK as well, for that matter. Like you say, we were talking about some of the big brands you work with. With this, I take it you're in that domestic market as well.
We primarily focus on commercial.
Okay.
So what's called destination charging. So it's basically any locations where people are likely to park their cars for a period of time.
Like business parks like we're on now.
So like, office blocks, train stations, shops.
Supermarkets.
Where people can go there, stay there for a few hours. So you don't need that DC high power charging, HPC.
Yeah.
Because that would be too expensive, and
just unnecessary. Really,
and if you think of something like a shopping centre, as a shopping centre owner, would you want people to leave the shopping centre after 30 minutes because their car's finished charging?
Yeah, true.
You want to keep them in the shop.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get you. I get
Paul there.
I get you.
Oh, so that's interesting. So the domestic market, not so much. You're not going to be the standard for someone wants one at home for the new EV they bought and an installer's putting it on the wall for them.
We do have some domestic installations, and our chargers are fully fit for domestic installations. But with them being designed as commercial units, obviously we're talking about different price points. So we have to be realistic with, what any domestic charger costs these days versus what an entry point commercial charger would cost, for that matter. And we're not the entry point.
Right.
But what we do have is, generally speaking, like you'll have CTEK fan brands, brand fans, can't even say it properly, who will have loads of 12-volt chargers for their cars already, and then they transition to EVs and they go, oh, CTEK do a charger, and at that point they don't mind paying that premium and having a commercial grade charger at their property.
Right.
And particularly, when you start looking at those sort of situations as well, I mean, our charger's fairly compact, but you can get a version with 2 sockets.
Yes. Is that the one we've
I was just about to say, is that the one we've got displayed at our show? There's 2 ports on either side.
So, and sort of a pull for it is, even if you start going through all the D&O applications and things like this, you can limit the charger to be set to 7.2 kilowatts. So it's still not going over the 32 amp standard approach. But, if it's Mr. and Mrs. type situation, two vehicles, you plug one in.
Quite common, won't it, in the future?
I'm going to say, it's definitely going to be the future, isn't it? You don't want to have 4 chargers on your wall, do you, for 4 separate cars?
Exactly.
And if you plug one car in, that car will get 7.4 kilowatts. If you plug the second one in, both will downrate to 3.7. So that way you're not really going over any D&O limitations, and you're not...
It's got all the monitoring equipment inside to do.
Absolutely,
Okay.
So just off the back of that, then let's swing away from the domestic market, because like I say, that's not really where your price point is, which is understandable. And I hear this a lot, by the way, these days, where if that market gets saturated because everyone's fitting EV chargers in domestic, even with solar and battery, the domestic market, everyone's focused on that. That commercial market's a little bit untapped, isn't it, for installers? And if they've got a premium product like yourself with CTEK, that's a real opportunity. Tell us more about how installers can feed into that.
So one of the key things is, obviously, if somebody is looking at transitioning from domestic to commercial, it's key that they understand the foundations of the load management, because the way you approach it is slightly different. You're not looking just at your standard 50, 60 amp limitation that you need to look at for a single socket. Your potential will be looking at something like 4 to 12 sockets in a location. So you've got to understand the demand on that side and do your design. What's
actually there already?
Absolutely.
Come off.
And then there's a lot of other caveats. A big one at the moment is bend protection, because again, there's a lot of chargers that are out there with built-in bend protection, and if you go through all the regulations and standards, it can actually be a very sticky position when you go with certain solutions. So the recommended approach is always to have it externally. But then, there's a lot of complications further down the line that can come out, and it's anyone who's looking at transitioning into that space, they need to look at those things. They need to basically look at what a typical commercial setup would look like. And a lot of manufacturers like ourselves who focus on those sort of markets, we actually will almost hold their hand.
I was just about to say, would you be able to give them technical support?
Yeah. So
that's brilliant.
So from my perspective, for example, I primarily focus on large customers that we work with. So companies like CPOs who will manage multiple locations, but then they will subcontract installers very often to go out and do the maintenance, installations, design for them, etc. And they'll come to me and say, we want to onboard this company to do the install for us. And then depending on what we're doing, sometimes they'll come out on site together with the installer and we'll go through and take through settings and we actually play around. If that's not possible, or if the installation is further away, we offer monthly training sessions online. If it's a large installation company, we'll come to their premises and do a session with them. But we're there, the number of phone calls I get from different installers and companies going, can you speak your brains on X, Y, and Z? How can we get around this?
Yeah, I think that's key for someone probably transitioning from domestic to commercial, trying to take that leap, because as you said and Steve said, it's quite a crowded market, so it can be quite a scary leap from domestic to commercial, because like you said, it's a total different animal, so to speak. Your design goes from quite, not straightforward for domestic, but you probably know what you're doing. One cable, one new consumer unit, blah, blah, blah. Where this now you're looking at maximum demand, what you got there, what can you tap off, what cable sizes can you use, length, volt drop.
Like you say, understanding that installation to start with. And I think a lot of people, like you say, in that world, maybe doing a bit of monitoring as part of the project is key, isn't it? Like see what the demand is during peak times over, say, a 4-week period, to then see what you can actually install. And then I suppose with applications and DNOs and some, on that scale, you've got to obviously go through all that rigmarole as well.
Yeah, it gets a bit more complicated on that side, but also you've got other things to consider. If it's going to be a commercial install, you're looking into things like payment terminals, for example, which is in the UK now a requirement. So if it's a public installation, you've got to have at least one payment terminal. They'll take care. So you've got to understand how that taps into.
It's really important, isn't it? The customer can actually get there and charge the car, isn't it?
And what's really critical is, and I say this multiple times, even with CPOs, they know there's a requirement. But very often they will not be technical enough themselves to actually understand how that entire chain interacts. So if an installer wants to come in and sort of be ahead of the game, I always say to them, just look top to bottom, everything that's involved, learn the process, learn the actual chain. And then if you get in with one of these CPOs and you can tell them how everything works, they'll never let you go. You'll be working.
So that's the opportunity right there for installers. Just for our listeners, explain CPOs and me, perhaps.
So CPOs are basically...
I'm going to have a guess at car park operators.
Yes.
Come on, Steve. So brain's firing this morning.
So CPOs are generally, the best way to think of CPOs, it's like the equivalent of your petrol station operators.
They've got, like you say, multiple sites.
Yes.
Your parking centres, isn't it? I'm guessing up and down in the town centres, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's those sort of people.
Yeah. What we got next, Stanley?
Well, I was just probably going on to about the vehicle to grid and bi-directional charging and immersion technologies and plug and charge. See what CTEK has to offer to our members in that area.
So basically, there is a standard called ISO 15118, and that standard is responsible for the communication level between the vehicle and the charging equipment, as well as many other things. So it looks at things like encryption, it looks at higher level of communication, where if you don't follow the ISO standard, when you plug in the vehicle, you'll just see, it's charging. And that's all information you're getting. When you start integrating that, then you'll start getting further information like, what's the percentage of the charge? So you're getting more coming out. Now that comes with additional benefits with that communication, where something like plug and charge comes in, where essentially plug and charge it's a bit of a like Tesla style charging, where you pull up to a charger, plug your car in, you don't need to do anything. The car talks to the charger, and it goes, all right, it's this car which is registered with this account to this credit card. So as the end user, I just plug my card in,
Job done.
and it's going.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously that's been an option for quite a few DC chargers in the past.
Yeah, it's been going a few years as well.
Yeah. Whereas now it's sort of moving into the AC space as well, because again, as the CPOs and the end users are learning, apps can be quite complicated at times.
I know.
I think we've all got a story where you've gone somewhere, the app doesn't work, computer says
NAPIT, no, you
download
the app.
Yeah.
It just gets so
My favourite one is I've got a full folder on my phone with about 20 different apps, and then depending which part of country I'm in,
Yes.
it's like, I need this app, and then I've not been here for like 2 months, so now I've got to wait for it to update, and you kind of in that loop.
It sort of puts people off hearing that story. It might put customers potentially buying EV vehicles, you see, and obviously the government set loads of targets. They don't want it to happen, and they want that process to be a lot slicker, cleaner, whatever word you want to use.
That's what's happening, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and plug and charge is basically covering that gap.
Yeah.
Where, okay, there might be 20 different providers, but you register with them. They've got to offer something called roaming now, where basically there'll be a connection. Again, best example to give you is fuel card, where it's one. You create one account, and then it doesn't matter which one you go to.
Yes.
You may pay a few pennies more if you don't have an account with that particular provider.
Yes.
But you'll be able to use your account already.
That. That's what it needs.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes the entire process smoother. So you basically pull up, plug in, that's it. Right, hands off. And sort of the way CTEK have looked at things is our latest charger, so Charge Them Connected 3, has got the full capability for ISO 15118, and then we're rolling out features one by one to allow the end users to use them. But obviously, there's also other things like the backend provider, so the cloud solution, the monitoring software has got to support it. So we're working with the backend providers that our customers work with. So, right, when are you roughly expecting to have those features ready? So then we make sure that our firmware updates come out and unlock those features by that time.
So you're future-proofing your bits of
exactly.
So
chargers. What we're saying now essentially is if you were to buy one of our chargers, and don't get me wrong, there are a couple of other manufacturers sort of in a similar boat to us, where we've designed the hardware to be good for the next 5-10 years in terms of the feature set, what we see coming out.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean that everything will be on from day one.
But it's got the capability.
But it's got the capability, it's got all the hardware that's needed, it's got all the logic, it's got all the encryption required. And then it's just a case of working with these backend providers to unlock feature by feature.
And then you can turn it on as it goes. I like that. That's future-proofing because technology runs out very quick. You think of all these dumb chargers now that they can't fit them anymore because they've got to have at least some smart technology in them, haven't they?
And then if we start looking at things like vehicle to grid, obviously that's going to be a big thing moving forward.
Still a few years off, I would have thought.
Where do you see it being mostly infrastructure for to grid? Do you think in the domestic market, is that what they're heading for?
It will be a combination.
Okay.
And the way it's going to be a combination is obviously on the surface, domestic is a perfect application.
Yeah.
Right? We all know the cheap nighttime tariffs and that sort of stuff. Yeah. If you're working from home or if you have capability to charge at a lower rate at work, charging per car, you might want to use electrics in the house when you get back home.
Yeah.
So you've got all this sort of to play with, which is very on the surface. But then you've got sort of layers underneath it, where if there's an emergency and the power cuts out in the area, you'll have locations like hospitals
that can provide that.
Exactly. So you might have your car plugged in, and suddenly you'll find is that your backend provider starts discharging your car because there's an emergency situation. In that
which is right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's domestic level is one thing, but when you start looking at fleets, so there's a bunch of vans parked overnight, they're not being used. That's where it comes in at a commercial level.
Yes.
And obviously, the way it's being looked at is that if that was to happen, you will be compensated for this charge. But
when I get in your van in the morning and go, it's dead.
Well, like you said, for like a haulage company, they've got to be able to get moving in the morning, haven't they? They can't. They'll cost a lot of money.
So there are things like this. But again, those sort of situations would be emergencies. But also there's another factor that a lot of people generally overlook is, as everything solar, wind, everything's going through DC setup. And DC, obviously going to DC, to AC, you've got all sorts of issues with frequencies, frequency of supply.
Yeah.
And what is likely to happen, we've seen this in France already, for example, where the frequency of the supply will either drop or increase, and that can knock systems out, areas out. And obviously, if you lose power in a large section, well, in a city, in a small town, because of frequency response, because of that conversion of DC to AC, you could be in really big trouble.
Yeah.
Because if you lose power completely in that location. So some of the backend providers, what they actually are doing now is they're coming out with solutions where their cloud will talk to the DNOs, and if the end user subscribe to this, their vehicle, when it's plugged in, will be used as part of the balancing system.
Yeah.
So if the frequency starts decreasing, they'll ramp up charging to the vehicle.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Just to smooth everything.
Yeah, just to bring that frequency back into the vehicle.
It's even balanced.
There's too many fluctuations, isn't there? Because with inverters, the way they work, and funny enough, that meeting I was at the other day, without divulging too much, because I'm not allowed, I don't know if I'm supposed to or not, but they were saying the reason I said it's probably a good few years off is because of the things you've talked about. There's so many different people in the pot with this, and the variables, the DNOs, the backend providers, you guys yourselves. The car manufacturers is a massive one. Apparently, I think there's only 2 cars on the market at the moment. I think Polestar's one, and there's another one that have got inbuilt inverters within the vehicle.
So they're capable of doing that.
So they're capable, but they're still not ready because there's still that communication all the way through the system. It's not just, you think you've got a Nissan Leaf with, I don't know, 40 kilowatt hours, maybe more, plug it in, nice little bit of kit. I've got a 40 kilowatt hour secondary battery sat there. It's not as simple as that. We think it's there, don't we? But like you've explained, it's not quite.
Yeah, well, there's sort of, when I'm asked about it, I generally say there's 4 variables. Yeah. So there's the vehicle, there's the charger, there's the back end, and there's a DNO.
Yeah. And everything in between, communication, standards, cyber security.
Well, you just said they've all got to talk to each other, haven't they?
Exactly. So for this to work, all 4 have got to be on the same page, in the same location, at the same time.
Yeah, but it's like you say, your chargers are like your future-proof. Certain vehicles are doing it, so it feels like we're close, but we're not.
I think you made a good point about cyber security as well. All these communications.
That falls under a completely different standard where every provider's got to abide by that as well, because that we know from cyber attacks. That's the next thing. You imagine taking out that infrastructure that the grid's relying on for balancing and things like that. What do you see that's coming back to you, because you're technical, and I take it you get a lot of this coming to you directly, as you've already intimated. What do you see as some, maybe 2 or 3 of the main issues that installers are getting, and the whinges they have at manufacturers, perhaps?
For whatever reason, some manufacturers still have the approach of, we're selling you the box. Once you've got the box, it's your problem.
Yeah.
And that's very frustrating to see when that happens. So I would always say, if somebody's looking to transition, particularly into commercial space, is the way of research, see what support's available, just to make sure that when you're inside doing those first few installs, you're not going to be left.
Oh, it sounds like you're going to need it as well.
Yeah,
it's a different beast, isn't it? An animal.
And sometimes it comes down to very silly things where you might have been using a particular charger, and then a new model of that charger comes out, but something's changed. And then you go for support and they go,
Can the installer spec the charger, or would the client spec the charger? Generally,
it depends.
Okay,
it depends.
So your bigger clients.
I don't.
I suppose someone like Victor's already done the legwork, and he's in there with the company and these.
Yeah.
And again, it really depends sometimes as well, because very often the customer will say, "Oh, I want to have 10 sockets, 22 kilowatts." And then they'll have a 100 amp supply. It's like, there's a want.
This is what you can have.
And that's where the installer can actually drive them and explain things to them. And again, I would say another thing to watch out for in terms of compliance, and this is something that's been overlooked, and it's quite scary when you start looking into it. When you think of something like CE certification, every manufacturer can... we all produce our own certificates, so they're not externally produced, generally speaking. So it's basically manufacturers saying, yep, we believe we're compliant, but you never know whether they actually are, whether there's any grey areas or anything like this. So, and the installers, a lot of installers will take the approach of, well, if the manufacturer says they're compliant, that means I'm not in trouble.
Yeah.
If anything goes wrong, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
Well, if you start looking at CDM,
Read the small print.
if you look at CDM regulations, then the installer will be the system designer in the system.
Yes,
in many cases. So
I think that's really overlooked. That point there, really overlooked.
So so you will, if something's found to be non-compliant a year down the line, and you're the ones to spec that equipment. Sorry, but So what I would always say is, again, specifically in commercial areas, go for manufacturers that can provide external certification.
Yeah.
So that if somebody else has taken their charger, verified and gone through standards, and they've got a piece of paper saying, yep.
It ticks all the boxes.
Exactly. Yeah. So then you're not just going off what manufacturer says. And, in an ideal world, everything will be perfect and manufacturers will be honest completely. But in practice, sometimes there'll be certain things that people are not sure about.
We know they're not though, Victor, because we hear the horror stories. We had all that a few years ago with the electronic RCDs. There was one company, I can't remember the name of them now, we probably shouldn't name them on a podcast anyway, but they were the legal action was taken against them because they said it complied and it didn't.
Yeah.
So you've got to be really careful as manufacturers these days. And the good manufacturers like yourselves and others that are out there, they've got to overshadow these charlatan ones, haven't they? Because they're making some really bad stuff out there that you can... And if it's too cheap, don't install the thing.
I was just about to say, for installers, sometimes you do take it as face value, but as Victor's pointed out, research your products that you're going to use. I think that's really key.
I think one of the things we hear back from our members quite a bit on common issues is perhaps, they understand, the wiring, they understand the design side, and if they've got their heads around that and, like you say, they've done their homework and their research, they always get baffled by the software. Yeah. Because although there will be similarities between charger manufacturers and their software, there's a lot of nuances as well, aren't there? And that's improving all the time. Yeah. And I think, the app on the phone or whatever it may be, it might sometimes, I think for your larger commercial ones as well, some installers can't commission these systems at the death, can they? And that's where they think, I've got 3 days to do this job or whatever, and they end up there a week because 2 days is worth of software problems. I've been there myself, by the way. So
but again, what I would say with this, very often, it comes back to the point I made earlier about support.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, if it's the first 2-3 installs with a new product, it doesn't matter how simple the app is going to be. You will look at it and go,
you've still got to get your head.
Yeah. So it's how the manufacturer will then support you. Like with our approach has always been, if it's a new installer, right, well, let us know when you're doing the installation and what day you'll be roughly doing the configuration. And we'll try to schedule one of our support guys or girls to be available so that, for a particular time slot.
Will that be like over a video call?
It'll be a video call if you're doing it on your laptop, because ours, you don't need to install anything. Well, you can support a driver on your laptop if you're using a Windows laptop, or you can do a Wi-Fi connection through your phone without any apps or anything. It's literally just a hotspot from the charger. And they'll walk you through it.
Yeah, which is key, isn't it, for your first time, isn't it? Because you don't want to do the wrong step, do you? You've got to do it in a process, haven't you?
Yeah, it's little things to consider. And especially, when chargers is one thing, but when you start looking at load management, this is where it gets really, really critical. And again, I cannot stress enough that when you're looking at a manufacturer that offers their own load management, always sort of look at it in detail, because we all will give you a very high number of sockets that we can load manage, but how it's approached and how it's actually handled is different. So there was one manufacturer that was saying, you can do 100 sockets in line, but your feed had to be in line. So you had one cable that'd be feeding up to 100 sockets. So yes, you can.
I have to say,
yes, you can do it. But
how big's this cable?
I would like to be the car on the end. Why's my car not charging?
So what I'm going with this is that just because somebody says they can do something doesn't mean it's going to be practical. Or possible. And there's other approaches, like for example ourselves, we look at it as, we don't care how you pull the supply, how you run the cables, but we say you need to put everything into a network. From data perspective. And then, that way, like our figures is 500 sockets you can manage on a single system. Now, we've got working cases in Stockholm where they've actually got 602 devices, or 602 sockets managed off 2 devices working alongside each other.
Wow.
So, we've got actually real
Evidence it works.
So it's, again, when you're looking at things, and there are plenty of good solutions out there, but don't take everything at face value.
No, that's really key.
I suppose moving on, is there any, especially for the commercial market, is there any grants available for installers to tap into, to use, to be beneficial for them?
There's a lot of grants still out there, and they're going up until end of March, I think, 2026. And they've been extended. They should have ended 2 years ago, and they should have ended this year, and extended by another year. And there's a full range of them for different types of installs. So, for example, there's grants available for landlords. There's grants available for fleet installs. So if somebody's running the fleet and you're doing installation for them, then there's grants available to tap into these. So on the government website, there's a full list of them, and it's basically anything from very simple domestic all the way up to hundreds of sockets per location where they allow.
Yeah.
And it's all going to be granted. So, but also there's another thing that's worth pointing out on top of grants is, whilst it may not be directly applicable to the installers, but when installers start looking at working with CPOs, CPOs will be working in partnership with local councils and something called levy schemes, where basically the CPO and the council will co-fund installs.
Okay, yeah.
And they'll bring in the installers to do those installations for them. So essentially, from the installer perspective, they will tender the work. Very often the charge will be already specified.
Yeah.
So it kind of, it's a lot of work to get into this area, but if you manage to get into it, it's relatively low cost to actually be in that area, because the costs are absorbed by.
And you probably said before, the government has got lots of targets, haven't they, to achieve, and whether they're achievable, that's another conversation. But there's definitely opportunities. When there's targets to hit, there's always opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's what our members and installers are interested in, isn't it? Like, if I'm going to enter into that space, what is sometimes the comfort blanket, like we've already said, of domestic, not making that transition. But like I say, we're seeing it more and more now. If that becomes a saturated market and a race to the bottom, and everyone's doing it dirt cheap and installing the worst chargers, most good installers wouldn't want to be there, would they? No. And if you can, like you say, if you can get a council contract, that could set you up for many years and future-proof your business as well.
Absolutely.
Just as a final one, we've talked a little bit about the communication, so we'll sort of dive away from that one. If you had to give, say, 1 or 2 pieces of advice for like an EV installer now that's like maybe new into it or been doing it a while, what would future-proof? What would be the next thing you'd see them stepping into? Because obviously with your product, you've already said you're future-proofing your product. Is it simply as them just stepping up with that and keeping informed?
One of the key things to watch out for is how the tech is developing. So if you go back, let's say 3-4 years ago, everything was about EV chargers and there was a big bump around it. Now the big bump is around PV. Yeah. Obviously it's kind of changed over. But EV's not gone away.
No, it's not going away.
And it's going to carry on going. But the next steps that are going to happen is that integration of systems. And again, domestic level, it's fairly straightforward in the grand scheme of things. But when you start looking at those larger installs, commercial installs, where they want to use PV to actually charge the vehicles, or battery systems to charge the vehicles, we've got cases now where some of the construction companies who have pop-up sites, particularly around the areas where there'll be people living, they cannot run generators there 24/7 because of the noise.
Yeah. So
they're looking at things like portable systems, so portable battery systems, and feeding the entire site of it.
We talked about this a little bit last night, didn't we?
Yeah. So suddenly now you're away from your fixed installs, and you could be working and setting up the chargers for the manufacturers of that particular type of equipment.
Yeah. Because imagine like we was on about porta cabins.
I was just thinking that, and you could have maybe some solar panels, and feeding the batteries, and all that. Like a temporary system, so to speak, but movable from different building site to different build site.
And honestly, I went to visit one of the companies quite locally yesterday, and they've used our charger as a sort of demo, as a proof of concept, if you like, for a couple of customers. Like those systems are really, really clever. Like they were explaining in terms of you'd still hook up a generator to it, but the battery control system would ensure that if it's kicking in the generator's always working in the best efficiency state, because you'll have the efficiency modes and yada, yada, yada. But you'll bring in the generator only when it can hit that target. And if it cannot hit that target, it'll bypass the batteries and send the energy straight out from the generator. But you always, if the generator's working, you're not running the generator to power up a bulb. You'll be pulling some decent amount of power to make sure that you're not wasting any energy.
It's very clever, isn't it? I mean,
it was very clunky back in the day, because when we used to do generators for hospitals, MOD sites, it was always you waited for that Jenny kind of thing to do its thing. But now you've got these portable battery systems, like you say, harmonics, frequency, voltage ranges. It just goes boom. It recognises it, communicates, and sees it. So these systems are great.
So it's what I would say is always for the installers as they're looking forward, is just be aware of the tech and how it's all integrating, because there's going to be a lot more integration, and chances are when we really start looking at things like V2G and V2X, with V2X being vehicle to everything, there's going to be a lot of modifications that will be required in domestic and commercial settings. So if you're not careful, you'll be behind the loop on those
well,
things.
like you said at the start, though, buses, trains, they're all going to be battery powered, electric at some point in the future.
It's an exciting time, isn't it, for our industry? Definitely. Well, Victor, that's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. You give us a lot of insight, and I've learned a lot. I always learn a lot on these podcasts. So thanks for your time today and coming in and seeing us. So thanks for listening to another What's Current podcast from NAPIT, and we hope to see you on the next one. So stay safe, stay grounded, and keep the current flowing.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.